Most people have wishes. They wish they were more successful. They wish they had better relationships. They wish they were healthier or wealthier. But wishes are like clouds passing by on a summer day, beautiful to look at, but carrying no substance. Standards, on the other hand, are the foundation upon which you build your life. Standards are non-negotiable. When you raise your standards, you immediately change your life. Let me share something with you that transformed my understanding of success. Years ago, I met a gentleman who grew up in the most challenging circumstances you could imagine. Poverty, neglect, limited education, all the excuses the world would readily accept for a life of mediocrity. But this man was living an extraordinary life, financially, personally, in his relationships and his contribution to others. I asked him, how did you overcome such incredible odds? His answer was simple yet profound. He said, one day I decided I was not willing to live that way anymore. I raised my standards. That's it. He didn't suddenly acquire new resources. He didn't win the lottery. He simply decided that he would no longer accept less than his potential from himself. He raised his standards and his life rose to meet them. Now, why does this work? Because human beings will do more to avoid pain than to gain pleasure. When you raise your standards, what was once acceptable becomes unacceptable. The pain of not living up to your new standard drives behavior far more powerfully than the pleasure of achieving a goal. Let's think about this for a moment. If losing weight is a goal, you might or might not achieve it. But if being healthy is a standard, a non-negotiable part of who you are, then you'll find yourself making very different decisions about what you eat, how you move, and how you live. If financial independence is a goal, you might save when it's convenient. But if providing abundantly for yourself and your family is a standard, you'll find ways to increase your value in the marketplace, manage your resources, and build wealth regardless of economic conditions. The remarkable thing about standards is that they operate at the level of identity. Goals are something you pursue. Standards are something you embody. Goals are something you check off a list. Standards are who you are. Now, let me clarify something important. Raising your standards doesn't mean becoming perfectionistic or unrealistic. It doesn't mean setting yourself up for failure by demanding the impossible. It means elevating what you're willing to accept from yourself in the key areas of your life. Think about the areas of your life where you've already set high standards. Perhaps it's how you parent your children, how you perform at work, or how you maintain your home. In these areas, you don't need external motivation. You don't need someone pushing you. You simply do what needs to be done, because anything less would violate your sense of who you are. What if you applied that same level of commitment to every important area of your life? What if mediocrity became unacceptable? What if getting by was no longer an option? I believe that the moment you raise your standards is the moment your life begins to change. But, and this is crucial, raising standards alone isn't enough. You must also change your beliefs. Your beliefs about what's possible for you, about what you deserve, about your capacity to grow and contribute. These form the operating system of your life. If your standards say, I demand excellence from myself, but your beliefs say, I'm not capable of excellence, guess which one wins? Your beliefs every time. So the process of transformation requires both raise your standards and change the beliefs that limit you. Let me give you a personal example. When I was just starting out in business, I set a standard for myself that I would become financially independent. But I had a limiting belief that people from my background didn't become wealthy. They worked hard, they were honest, but wealth was for other people, people with different backgrounds, different education, different connections. As long as that belief remained, my standard of financial independence was just a wish dressed up in fancy language. It wasn't until I challenged and changed that belief, until I found examples of people with similar backgrounds who had achieved what I wanted, until I educated myself about the principles of wealth creation that apply to everyone, that my standard had the foundation it needed. And here's what's fascinating. Once I aligned my standards and beliefs, the resources I needed began to appear. The mentors, the opportunities, the ideas, they were there all along, but I couldn't see them through the fog of my limiting beliefs. Many of you are sitting here today with extraordinary potential, with dreams and aspirations that would transform not only your life, but the lives of countless others. But you've settled for less. You've accepted a standard of mediocrity in one or more areas of your life, and that acceptance has become your ceiling. Today I want to challenge you to raise that ceiling, to decide once and for all what you will no longer accept in your life, your work, your relationships, your health, your contribution. Because here's the truth. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your standards. Not the quality of your wishes or your hopes or even your prayers, but the quality of your standards, what you demand from yourself day in and day out. Now, Let's talk about how you actually go about changing your standards. Because it's one thing to be inspired by the idea and quite another to implement it in your daily life. First, you must get absolutely clear about what you will no longer accept in your life. This requires brutal honesty. Where have you been settling? Where have you been making excuses? Where have you been blaming circumstances rather than taking responsibility? Write these things down. Make a declaration to yourself. I will no longer accept underscore, 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 underscore in my life. Fill in that blank with the specific standards you're raising. I will no longer accept being overweight and lethargic. I will no longer accept financial struggle and uncertainty. I will no longer accept superficial relationships that drain rather than fulfill. I will no longer accept work that doesn't utilize my highest gifts and talents. Be specific, be clear, and most importantly, be honest with yourself. Second, define your new standards with the same level of clarity and specificity. What exactly will you now demand of yourself? What are the new minimum requirements for your life? Again, write these down. I now require myself to underscore, 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 underscore. I now require myself to make health-supporting choices daily. I now require myself to save and invest 20% of my income. I now require myself to communicate openly and authentically in all my relationships. I now require myself to do work that challenges me to grow and contribute at my highest level. The key here is to be specific enough that you'll know when you're meeting your standard and when you're not. Vague standards produce vague results. Third, identify the beliefs that must change to support your new standards. What have you been believing about yourself, about what's possible, about what you deserve that has kept your standards low? For every new standard you set, there will be at least one limiting belief that must be transformed. Find it, name it, and then actively seek evidence that contradicts it. If you believe you're not disciplined enough to maintain optimal health, find examples in your own life and in the lives of others that demonstrate discipline is a skill that can be developed, not a fixed trait. If you believe financial abundance is for others but not for you, study the principles of wealth creation. Find examples of people who started with less than you have and created prosperity. Replace limiting beliefs with empowering ones. I can't becomes I can learn. It's too late becomes the best time to start is now. I don't deserve becomes I am worthy of all that I desire and willing to do what it takes to achieve it. Fourth, and this is where most people fall short, take immediate action to demonstrate your commitment to your new standards. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, not when circumstances are perfect. Now, what's one thing you can do today that aligns with your new, higher standard? Do that thing. No matter how small it might seem, that single action begins to create momentum. And momentum, my friends, is the ally of achievement. If your new standard is optimal health, perhaps today's action is drinking water instead of soda, or taking a 30-minute walk, or preparing a nutritious meal. Whatever it is, do it today. If your new standard is financial independence, perhaps today's action is setting up an automatic savings plan, or reading a chapter of a book on investing, or having a conversation with someone who has achieved what you want to achieve. The specific action matters less than the fact that you're taking action, because action is the bridge between intention and result. Finally, surround yourself with others who share or support your new, higher standards. We become like the people we associate with most closely. If your standards are rising but your associations remain the same, you're creating unnecessary resistance in your life. Find mentors, find peers, find communities where your new standards are the norm, not the exception. These relationships will both challenge and support you as you grow into your new standards. Now, let me address something important. Raising your standards will create discomfort. It will disrupt patterns and habits that, while not serving your highest good, have become familiar. It will challenge relationships with people who are invested in you staying the same. It will require you to develop new skills, new mindsets, new ways of being in the world. In short, it will be uncomfortable. And that's precisely the point. Growth happens at the edge of your comfort zone, not within it. By raising your standards, you're deliberately stepping into discomfort for the sake of becoming more fully who you're capable of being. Embrace this discomfort, welcome it. It's the feeling of your life changing, of old limitations falling away, of new possibilities emerging. Remember, too, that the discomfort is temporary, but the benefits of higher standards last a lifetime. The discomfort of exercising today gives way to the lasting joy of vibrant health. The discomfort of fiscal discipline today creates the permanent security of financial independence. The discomfort of authentic communication today builds relationships of enduring depth and meaning. The price of growth is always paid in advance, and it's always paid in the currency of discomfort. But oh, my friends, what a bargain it is when you consider the return on that investment. Let me share another insight with you that has served me well over the years. The standard you're willing to accept becomes the standard you're destined to live. Think about that. If you're willing to accept a job that doesn't challenge you or utilize your gifts, that's the job you'll have. If you're willing to accept relationships where you're not valued, those are the relationships you'll experience. If you're willing to accept a level of health that leaves you tired and depleted, that's the health you'll have. Your willingness to accept less than you're capable of creates the ceiling of your achievement. Raise that ceiling by raising your standards, and suddenly new vistas of possibility come into view. I'm reminded of a remarkable woman I met years ago who transformed her life through the power of raised standards. She had been overweight for decades, trying every diet, every exercise program, every pill and potion promising quick results. Nothing lasted? Nothing transformed? Then one day, after a health scare that landed her in the hospital, she made a fundamental decision. She would no longer accept poor health as her destiny. She raised her standard from "I want to lose weight" to "I am a person who honors her body with movement and nourishing food." Notice the shift. It wasn't about a goal anymore. It was about identity. It wasn't about what she wanted to achieve. It was about who she decided to be. Within 2 years, she had lost over 100 pounds. But more importantly, she had gained vitality, confidence, and a sense of personal power that transformed every area of her life. Her career advanced, her relationships deepened, her contribution to her community expanded. All because she raised her standards in one crucial area, and that new standard created a ripple effect throughout her entire life. That's the power of standards. They don't just change what you do, they change who you are. And when you change who you are, you change what's possible for you. Now, I want to address a concern that might be arising for some of you. But Jim, you might be thinking, what if I raise my standards and still fail? What if I demand more of myself and can't deliver? Won't that just create more disappointment and frustration? It's a fair question. And here's my answer. The failure is not in falling short of your standards. The failure is in lowering them to match your current performance. Let me say that again. The failure is not in falling short of your standards. The failure is in lowering them to match your current performance. When you raise a standard and initially fall short, which is almost inevitable, you have two choices. You can lower the standard back to your comfort zone, or you can raise your performance to meet the new standard. The first choice leads to stagnation disguised as contentment. The second leads to growth, achievement, and the deep satisfaction that comes from becoming more than you were. So yes, there will be gaps between your new standards and your initial performance. Those gaps are not failures, they're feedback. They show you exactly where you need to focus your attention, develop new skills, adopt new habits, or seek additional support. Embrace those gaps. They are the roadmap to your growth. And remember this, no one consistently performs at a level higher than their standards. You might occasionally exceed them through extraordinary effort or favorable circumstances, but consistent performance requires consistent standards. If you want to permanently change your results in any area of your life, you must permanently change your standards. Let's talk now about another aspect of standards that often goes unrecognized, their contagious nature. When you raise your standards, it affects not only you, but also everyone around you. Your family, your friends, your colleagues, your community, they all feel the impact of your elevated expectations. Some will be inspired and follow your lead. Others will feel challenged or even threatened by your growth. Both reactions are natural, and both provide valuable information about which relationships will support your continued evolution and which may need to be reassessed. Never apologize for raising your standards. Never diminish yourself to make others comfortable with their mediocrity. Instead, let your transformation serve as an invitation to those around you, an invitation to join you in demanding more from life and from themselves. The greatest gift you can give to those you care about is not your accommodation to their limitations, but your demonstration of what's possible when you refuse to be limited. I remember working with a young entrepreneur who was struggling to build his business. He was working incredibly hard but seeing minimal results. When we examined his standards, I discovered that he was willing to accept clients who didn't value his service, didn't pay on time, and were generally difficult to work with. His standard was, I'll take whatever business I can get. And that standard was creating exactly the business he didn't want. We raised the standard. I only work with clients who value my expertise, implement my recommendations, and conduct business with integrity. Initially, he was terrified. But what if I don't have enough clients, he asked. Then you'll find them, I replied. But first you have to be unwilling to accept less. Within 6 months, he had transformed his client base. Not only was he working with better clients, but he was doing better work because he wasn't drained by problem relationships. His income doubled, his satisfaction tripled, all because he raised his standards about who he was willing to work with. The same principle applies in every area of life. Raise your standards for the food you eat, and your health will improve. Raise your standards for the books you read and the media you consume, and your mind will expand. Raise your standards for the conversations you engage in, and your relationships will deepen. Your life always moves in the direction of your highest standards. Now, there's an objection I often hear when I talk about standards, and it goes something like this: but Jim, aren't you just setting people up for perfectionism and constant dissatisfaction? If we're always raising our standards, won't we never be content with what we have or who we are? It's a thoughtful question that deserves a thoughtful answer. Raising your standards is not about perfectionism, it's about growth. It's not about being dissatisfied with who you are, it's about being excited about who you're becoming. The key distinction is this: perfectionism demands flawless performance and ties your worth to your achievements. Raised standards demand consistent growth and tie your satisfaction to your progress. Perfectionism says, I must be the best or I'm nothing. Raised standards say, I must be better tomorrow than I am today. Perfectionism creates anxiety. Raised standards create momentum. So no, I'm not advocating for a life of perpetual dissatisfaction. Quite the opposite. I'm advocating for a life of perpetual growth, which is the only reliable path to lasting fulfillment. Because here's what I know after decades of studying human achievement and happiness: the joy is not in arriving at some final destination of perfection. The joy is in the journey of becoming. When you raise your standards, you're not just changing what you achieve, you're changing what you experience along the way. You're trading resignation for determination, complacency for curiosity, mediocrity for mastery. And that trade, my friends, is the bargain of a lifetime. Let me share one more story that illustrates the transformative power of raised standards. Years ago, I worked with a family business that was struggling to survive. The second-generation owner had taken over from his father and was trying to maintain the business using the same standards that had worked in the previous generation. But the market had changed, technology had changed, customer expectations had changed, and his standards hadn't. His standard was good enough, the same products, the same service, the same marketing that had been good enough in his father's day. But in a rapidly evolving marketplace, good enough is a standard that guarantees decline. It's a commitment to becoming progressively irrelevant. We work together to raise his standards across the board, from good enough to industry leading, from keeping up to setting the pace, from meeting expectations to creating raving fans. The transformation wasn't instant, and it wasn't easy. It required new skills, new systems, new people, and most of all, a new mindset. But within 3 years, the business had not just survived but thrived. Revenue had doubled. Profitability had tripled. And most importantly, the owner had rediscovered his passion for the business. All because he raised his standards from good enough to extraordinary. That's the power available to each of you today. The power to decide once and for all what you will no longer accept and what you will now demand of yourself, your work, your relationships, and your life. The power to trade good enough for remarkable. The power to trade acceptable for exceptional. The power to trade what is for what could be. Now, as we come to the close of our time together, I want to leave you with a challenge. Actually, I want to leave you with a decision. The decision is this: will you raise your standards today? Not tomorrow, not when circumstances are perfect. Not when you have more time or more resources or more support. Today. Will you decide right now what you will no longer accept in your life? Will you declare right now what you will now demand of yourself? This decision costs nothing but changes everything. It requires no special talent, no privileged background, no extraordinary resources. It requires only the courage to expect more from yourself than others might think reasonable. And that courage, my friends, is available to you right now. I believe that inside each of you is a vision of what your life could be, a vision of greater abundance, greater contribution, greater joy, greater impact. That vision isn't a fantasy, it's a glimpse of your potential. It's what becomes possible when you raise your standards to match your capabilities. Don't let that vision fade. Don't let that potential go unrealized. Don't settle for less than you're capable of being, doing, having, and giving. Raise your standards and watch your life rise to meet them. Change your standards and your life will change. It's that simple and it's that profound. Now, I want you to take a moment right now. Close your eyes if you're comfortable doing so. Take a deep breath and ask yourself this question: what standard am I ready to raise today? Listen for the answer. They're waiting for you to acknowledge it. Maybe it's a standard for your health. Maybe it's a standard for your work. Maybe it's a standard for your relationships or your finances or your spiritual growth. Whatever it is, name it, claim it, and make the decision that from this moment forward you will no longer accept anything less. That decision, that raising of your standards, is the first step on a new path, a path that leads to a life of greater achievement, greater fulfillment, and greater contribution. A path that leads to becoming all that you're capable of being. A path that begins right here, right now, with your decision to expect more from yourself in your life. Raise your standards, and everything rises with them: your performance, your results, your satisfaction, your impact. Change your standards, and you change your life. The choice is yours. And the time is now. Thank you